Thanks for tuning in to the Marvel Movie Minute.
Want to skip those pesky ads and get early access?
Become a member at truestory.fm/join and discover all the other great perks that come with it.
Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a weekly podcast in which, despite Pete trying to rush me, I try to make sure that we assemble to explore with deep exploration the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 5 minutes at a time. You might have once thought we explored them 1 minute at a time. That was a lie. It has always been 5 minutes. It will always be 5 minutes. And in this, our 8th season, but clearly our best season, so really our first season, we are looking at, not just looking at, we are exploring, we are investigating, we are interrogating the cinematic masterpiece that is Thor: The Dark World. I'm Pete Wright.
I feel like I'm being gaslit something hard right now.
Don't think, just smile. That's Matthew Fox. But today, putting the gaslighting aside, we are talking about minutes 56 through 60, which begins with Odin saying he loves the smell of napalm in the morning and ends with Thor trying to get his brother's help by telling his brother how terrible he is.
That is true. Those are both true. Oh, we've got lots to talk about today, Matthew. This is a hinge set of minutes for us today. It hinges the first half and the second half of the movie, and we have also hinged as of today. We have crested the halfway point of our season, and with that, we hear plans in motion. Today.
Yes.
Do you have any sort of surprising gut reaction to these 5 minutes? Something that will really put me on my heels. Unexpected.
They suck.
No, okay, so
really.
no surprise at all. Look, we get Darcy back. That's fine.
I'll actually say it. Here's the thing. It's not that these are the normal minutes. It's that these are the minutes when it's like, imagine you go to a restaurant because they have the great desserts. You know, or no, I even say that. Let's say you're going to a 6-course meal and you've been told that the 4th course is just going to truly be out of this world. And maybe the 1st course is okay. And the 2nd and 3rd courses are pretty bad, but you know that that 4th course is just going to be magnificent and put such a smile on your face that it'll carry you through to the end. And then the 4th course comes out and it's burnt. And like you can sense that the ingredients were great. The recipe was great, but it's burnt. It was misused and it's terrible. And now not only is all the waiting you've had proven to be in vain, but also it reminds you like the rest of this is going to suck too. As I've said, I think the heart and soul of the Thor movies is Loki and is Loki's relationship with his brother, with his father, with his mother. And here we get the beginnings of a really interesting opportunity to explore more of Thor and Loki, and the writers just shit all over it. So not surprised, but maybe like a little bit of hope. The one course in this meal that I thought could really be worthwhile has been dashed.
Yeah, I can't say honestly that I disagree. And I really do want to pull apart what's working and what isn't working in the script in these 5 minutes. Because for me, I'm right with you on the Loki Thor stuff. Also, we get Anthony Hopkins saying, ha ha ha, which I find a jarring utterance
because you're right. It's not Odin saying it. Because Odin would never say that. It's Anthony Hopkins saying it.
It's Anthony Hopkins. Yeah.
Also, if I can take my restaurant metaphor even further, far past the point of absurdum, but this will let us talk about the first thing I want to talk about. Imagine also this is a restaurant that you know is known for a couple of things. One of which is that 4th course you're expecting. Another is something that you always thought the restaurant did well, but isn't on the menu tonight. And then all of a sudden they offer it to you as like an in-between courses little teaser. But it actually turns out to be terrible. Because one of the other great parts about the Thor universe, and especially explored in the first Thor movie, was Heimdall. Heimdall is a fantastic character. Idris Elba, I think, is on the same level as Anthony Hopkins in terms of just like fantastic acting resume and acting chops. And we set up this really interesting question of his loyalty, where he knows that Odin is wrong, and he knows that Thor is right, in that Thor is trying to go against Odin, and Thor is trying to do this in a way of, I am doing this, it is what Odin needs, it is what Asgard needs, it is what Heimdall, you are sworn to protect, needs, but it is going against what he wants. And so Heimdall specifically says, I cannot overrule my king's wishes, even for you. And now we have this amuse-bouche that I didn't expect was going to happen, that we have this interesting conflict, and then immediately Thor starts saying, okay, well, what about here's my plan? And Heimdall just joins in.
Yes, right. He says, you're asking me to commit treason. And Thor says, no, I'm not. I'm asking you to commit treason. That's
right.
Effectively the exchange. And
not treason, treason.
Treason. Did you hear the difference? It's subtle, but it's there.
One has more trees.
Yeah, I think it's problematic. It's a problematic number of trees. And this comes after we've already got Odin completely entrenching himself in fatalistic war rhetoric, which I think, I think does work. Like, that's one of the things that I think does work. And this clash that isn't just about logistics, right? It's about ideology in this first scene. Odin's kind of absolutist fight to the last Asgardian, willing to sacrifice them all, met with Thor's, how are you different than Malekith, right? That's juicy. That's good stuff, right? That really works. And it elevates the dialogue, I think, above expositional war council chatter, which we do get in these movies for sure. I think it gives Thor, but mostly Odin, a chance to dramatize a thematic argument and embody vengeance and pride in a way that we didn't see him do in Thor 1, right? We have never seen him go off the reservation like this. And I ultimately like that. It's the performance, it's the ha that I find a little bit jarring, and I think sets the tone for coming scenes.
And I think it all ties together in these minutes, because what Odin is doing is exactly what he was lecturing Thor and Loki that they cannot do if they are to become ruler, if they are to become king. Because, and this goes to, people often joke about how, the English monarch and other monarchs refer to themselves in the royal we. One reason for that, there's a lot of monarchical nonsense, but one reason for it is the idea that you are not acting as in your personal interest, you're acting in the interest of the crown of the nation. If you've seen the movie, the TV show The Crown, there's a famous story about how Elizabeth would like her sister to be allowed to marry the man she wants, but because of the idiotic rules that she thinks she has to follow of the English monarchy, she can't allow the Princess Margaret to marry this divorced man. And it's the same kind of thing here of, it's funny, I was just on on my superhero ethics podcast, we were talking about this, that of course, when it is your wife, when it is your mother, when it is your child or your parent or any of those things who is killed, you're going to see red. You're not going to have a calm, logical reaction. You're going to want to go out and do terrible, bloody things to the person who did terrible, bloody things to the ones you love. But that's why you're not the one who's supposed to make the decision.
Right.
And in this case, Odin is and it's incredibly hard. And I get why people say, I don't want to be king. But he is supposed to be able to say, I am going to step back and realize that my responsibility is to all of Asgard. And if my desire to wreak vengeance for my dead wife means that I'm endangering all the people of whom I am king, then I am out of line and I have to step back. But instead, he says, he has this blind conference. He's willing to sacrifice, and the quote is, as many are needed of his own people. Because here it's been reversed, and Thor is the one seeing with some legitimacy, but Odin just can see red.
And that, I think you've just pulled out why I think the end of this scene is worse than the beginning. Because we set up Odin as this vengeful, wrathful character, but we never personalize his rhetoric, right? It is never tied directly and explicitly to his rage at his own losses, to the death of Frigga, to ground it emotionally. He becomes kind of a one-note, warhawk, right? It's just, this is all he is. It is the thinnest and most obvious of character constructions. And
Right.
that makes it just scream, I'm here for plot now. Anthony Hopkins has been reduced to plot.
And that's such a great point, because I realize I'm giving him too much credit. I want it to be about his wife. But you could just as easily read that as it's about, like, he got his ass kicked by his ancient enemy, by the enemy his father beat. And so, like, that could be a whole beat. It could be about him feeling like his job is to keep Asgard safe. He failed in that. There are so many character beats that could have been explored, and they miss all of them. And then they also miss a bunch of them with Loki and Thor, which we'll get to in a bit.
So we cut hard from here and we go to Earth, and now we're in an apartment scene, and it's Darcy and our himbo friend, and he's watching TV and she's leaving a voicemail. And here we are again with the bittersweet symphony that is things that work and things that don't. High jump paired with low ceiling. I think that the cut from mythic Asgard hard to Darcy's voicemail, because I like her so much, paired with Selvig streaking, that sharp tonal contrast is fine. It's a palate cleanser, right? It's high Shakespearean aspirational drama punctured by earthbound insanity, right? Absurdity. The other side of that coin is that the comic relief structurally halts the momentum that we have in Asgard, which we're kind of building up to. And Selvig's Stonehenge streak is funny, but it totally undercuts, again, Selvig's scientific dignity as a buffoon. And it's a thing that, like, we've talked about the buffoonery of Eric Selvig when he was actually streaking in Stonehenge, and now we're doing it again. The freeze frame on the television set, it lands as a joke with no substance. It is at the expense of tonal coherence. As a script element, it just feels like obligatory MCU stuff. Yeah.
I love Darcy. And the fact that I didn't want to see Darcy in this moment, it's like, I'm an allergy king today, but there's that podcast guest you have always wanted, and it's just your dream to get them on the podcast. And then you're in the middle of this beautiful, intimate moment with your romantic partner, and all of a sudden the podcast guest knocks on your door and it's like, hey, here. And you're like, any other time, glad to see you. Not now. And that's how I felt about Darcy, especially because the Darcy scene also opens up a couple of interesting things. She casually mentions the existence of S.H.I.E.L.D. in front of the himbo, but then we never do anything with that. She's like, oh, no, never mind. That's a secret. She learns that Eric is off his rocker. And again, it's right. We're just watching the same footage over again. It's not even like the next step of Eric's stuff.
Right.
It's the height of cinematic laziness in that regard. And she just makes a face.
Yeah.
Like, there is no cutting remark. There is no insight. There is no, like, what if this was the moment when the person who always laughs at other people's discomfort has a genuine moment of, oh no, Eric's in trouble, we need to help him. Like,
right.
None of that.
So here we are coming off of the Odin Thor moment where characters are acting the hell out of stuff, but not advancing the story forward, right? They just embody their worldviews. And then we cut to this equally thin, obligatory comic moment with Darcy that does not move the story at all, because she's leaving a voicemail to a guy that we already know is in authority or in custody. And I don't see how this beat deepens the story at all.
Yeah.
In fact, maybe it doesn't even cheapen the story either. It is completely benign, and maybe its only service is to remind us that Darcy's still here.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it harms the overall story, because I think if we cut immediately from Thor realizing he can't do anything with his father to Thor going to talk to Heimdall, I think that connects a lot more. I'm also wondering, like, I'd love to see an original script of this movie, because I have to believe that there was more of a payoff to that there was going to be a payoff to the tour guide, hearing that this thing called S.H.I.E.L.D. exists, or learning more about Selvig, or that there was going to be more of a plot of her trying to rescue Selvig or something like that. And so they cut a lot of that, but then I have no idea why they're leaving this one scene in just seems like the height of cinematic malpractice.
Yeah, and I should say we do have a link to a script, but it's not a shooting script; it's a transcription script, and that I'm with you. It's a bummer because I would love to see what original intent was for this film. I feel like we're kind of plowing through this because what we really want to get to is the Loki stuff. But we're on the precipice, and that precipice, joining us on the precipice is Heimdall.
Yep.
We cut from Darcy, we go to Heimdall, and we are escalating. Right, this functionally at this point in the script, we're escalating tension. Right, we're trying to. We're trying to say how important this is. Words like treason of the highest order are uttered, and here we know that the scope and scale, not just the Malekith thing, the sort of universal celestial trauma that we're about to deal with is in play, but also the fragility of the political royal structure of Asgard is at stake. Right? Those two things exist in conflict. I kind of like that.
Well, of course you do, because it's one of the oldest questions in drama.
Yeah.
Like one of the fundamental questions of drama, and this goes not only back to Shakespeare, but all the way back to the Greeks. It's a central part of the play Antigone, more than 3,000 years old, or 2,000 years old at least, is when you believe in duty and obedience to authority because you believe that the king is right. What happens when you think the king is wrong? And do you have obedience to the king, or do you have obedience to what is right? And that is the position that Heimdall is in. And it's a crucial conflict. And it's one that is so many superheroes go through it because it's a really interesting question. And the more power you have and the higher the consequences of what you choose, the more important this becomes. And it's not I was just following orders. It's Heimdall. I don't think we can fault him for saying he has spent his life believing that Odin is right and that he hasn't sworn to do what he thinks is best for Asgard. He has sworn to do what he thinks he has sworn to do what Odin tells him is best for Asgard. And now that's because he believes that Odin knows best what's best for Asgard, but all that's now in conflict. And it's kind of like they raise the curtain on this really interesting thing, and then they just bring it down again. And it's just so disappointing because, to me, I was like, no, let's spend 30 more minutes with Heimdall. Let's see him go through this, because in so many things, one of my favorite plot lines is that person who eventually joins the hero because they realize that they are being lied to. And not even lied to. Odin's acting in good faith. He's just wrong. And Heimdall coming to that realization could have been such a good story. Think about V for Vendetta and The Cop and so many other stories where what makes the story so powerful is when the Javert character, the person who said, I have to be allegiant to the law, says, you know what? No, I have to be allegiant to what's right, and joins the hero. And here he speaks his concern. Thor kind of gives him a loophole, and he doesn't even he never says, fine, I'll accept it. He's just like, okay, well, let's start doing it.
Yeah, we had the opportunity to have these two characters talk about the consequence trolley problem that is loyalty versus right. And we didn't get that. Plus, the Bifrost is closed. Malekith is going to return. Odin is blind. Much of this just reiterates exactly what we already know, right?
Yeah.
This feels like a sort of a save the cat structure where at page 50 we have to get to this kind of conversation, and this is the first thought best thought kind of conversation that came out of it. I find problematic. Its circle dialogue ends up being rather circular, and as you pointed out in the beginning, they end up saying it's treason, but no, let's do it anyway.
But it's not the most disappointing point of these 5 minutes, and we'll get to that now.
No more illusions, Matthew.
Yeah.
No more illusions. I actually love that beat. Loki offers us false bravado, which, we know he's capable of, followed by Thor's demand, no more illusions. And we get a classic screenwriting move. Literalize the subtext. Right?
Yeah.
We're going to make literal what Loki is feeling. And that illusion versus truth setup, that's Loki's core trait. And that we drop the illusion to show this son in grief is 10 seconds of some great Loki stuff.
100%. This is, I think, and again, it's one of those things where it's like, it becomes so disappointing because it has so much potential. Because not only is it that we see Loki drop the illusion, it's that we see Thor as the one person who can see through the illusion.
Yes.
And that to some extent, what he cares about is his brother. It feels like in this moment, what he cares about is his brother's pain, that he doesn't want his brother to project false bravado. It feels like in this moment that he's saying, like, brother, you're devastated for the same reason I am. Our mother is dead. And then all that goes out the window the minute Thor keeps talking.
Yeah. I mean, look at how effectively we dramatize this character psychology without long speeches, right? I mean, this is really efficient. Did she suffer? Did she suffer? What an incredible question. It's what I wanted to see 5 or 10 minutes ago, which was how explicitly Loki has been made aware of the death of his mother. It conveys grief much more powerfully than a monologue. Then, God, you know what else? I'll just say before I say what really disappointed me the most. This first bit of subtextual wandering made me really look forward to Ragnarok and scenes like the elevator sequence when they're talking together, when the two brothers are talking together. I love those sequences, the frivolity of those sequences, and I think they're grounded in the fact that they have shared grief.
Right.
The problem is it lands on a resolution that undercuts the brotherly tragedy, right? It feels like we're executing a shorthand for we've got to remind the audience that there's no trust here. And Thor says, "You betray me, and I will kill you."
Right.
And it sucks all of the dramatic oxygen out of the scene.
Yeah, because he gets Loki to show vulnerability. And here's the thing, if you're going to ignore a trope, you have to do it in an intentional way that does something different. Because the next step of the trope is that once the person who's been your opponent shows their vulnerability, you now develop empathy for them because of the vulnerability that they're seeing. And you could have gone in a different direction. You could have gone that Thor is so hard-hearted because of the death of his mother that he can't do that for Loki. That would have been a brilliant direction to go, particularly because there is a gigantic elephant in the room that I just don't think the movie is ever going to remember is there, which is the fact that Loki is not just feeling grief, he's feeling responsibility.
Sure.
Because he helped Malekith and his people do what they did. He didn't see it was Malekith necessarily. He was just, the big monster guy, but he helped them. And so if Thor knows that, if that's the illusion Thor pierces, and therefore he says, I can't ever trust you or anything like that, but we don't get any of that. Instead, we get Loki doing what Thor has never seen him do before, at least not in our knowledge, being vulnerable. That is a step towards someone trusting you. And so for Thor to just throw it back in his face, it acts like in terms of the relationship between those two, the moment never happened. And that just feels like, so why did you bother doing that?
Yeah. I think at its best, these 5 minutes sort of employ conflict and subtext to advance theme and plot. The problem is it leans so heavily into MCU formula, this sort of exposition padding and the quick jokes that really disrupt the flow. And the bluntness of the cliche dialogue is heavy here.
Well, especially because imagine it was done this way. You have 3 people now, like all of Asgard is afraid, all of Asgard feels attacked, all of Asgard feels violated. they want to fight the Dark Elves because of that. But then you have 3 people who have been personally victimized because their mother or wife has been killed. Now, let's be clear, lots of Asgardian soldiers who also had wives and mothers and fathers and brothers and sons and daughters and all that also got killed. So, but of course, we're never going to think about that.
Right.
And so you have this tension between Thor and his father about how do we deal with the grief that we have. Let Loki into that conversation. What if Thor is too far on the other side and is just as hard-hearted? But here, Loki is actually able to offer Thor some needed perspective and remind him, I lost my mother too. And let that be what helps carry Thor forward into realizing, like, what if you reversed it? And like getting Loki is what actually starts them on this path of we have to perhaps do treason. You switch 5 lines of dialogue, you put one other scene in a different place, and it's a much better movie.
Yeah, I mean, you make the Thor Loki conversation a 3-hander instead of a 2-hander, and bring Odin, really Odin or Heimdall, but I think Odin. I think this is a father-son's conversation, and you're right. You have an opportunity to hash out what everyone is dealing with, and raise stakes through efficiency, loaded efficiency.
Right. Well, and you're right, because that's the key part of the Heimdall dilemma is Heimdall has to be convinced that his loyalty to Asgard should supersede his loyalty to Odin in particular when Odin has lost perspective. And we just never get that.
We never get that. Okay. That's the sort of thematic walkthrough of the script. Is there anything in these minutes that works for you from a production standpoint? The look, the feel, what plays?
Well, no, it's hard because, like I said, this isn't 5 terrible minutes.
Right.
I think really it is a question of your perspective of if you smell a beautiful dish as it's being brought out to you and then you taste it and it's terrible, do you walk away thinking, at least I got to enjoy that moment of smelling it? Or do you think that moment of smelling it is all the more painful? I respect those people who can say the first. For me, I'm the second. So I look at, yes, if I am the cinematographer who created the moment of the illusion dropping, I'm putting that in my resume tape. It was brilliantly technically constructed and the writing of it was great. But if you remind me of the time someone likely stroked my beard, I'm going to remember they did that so they can then kick me in the nuts. And so I'm sorry, I don't have a positive memory of them stroking my beard. Yeah. There were so many moments that I think could have been so good, that could have been, you know what, this is a terrible movie, but at least we got that great scene with Heimdall. At least we got that great scene with Thor and Loki. For me, and this is just how I approach things, I can't find that positive. Because to me, it just is actually a bigger negative because it's a lost opportunity.
Yeah, and I think those are paper cuts that stack up from production design through visual effects through editing choices too, right? Like from the production design perspective, Odin's throne room I think looks good. It's all trashed, but the light is good, nice golden hues, nice sort of stark symmetry. Heimdall's observatory is cool, good dark stone, lots of glowing mechanisms and things, vast cosmic backdrop, which I also think looks good. We go to Loki's cell. The contrast is awesome. The illusory sort of clean chamber, and then the reveal, as you say, the illusion reveal is really, really great. On the other hand, like there's a lot of green screen pushing in this thing that just give away that, especially when we're in Thor sequence, gives away that we're in a backdrop. Like it doesn't look well integrated. Asgard has a real green screen feel. The Bifrost tower shot is kind of terrible. The Stonehenge streaking sequence looks super composited, and they had every reason to get that right because it's on a TV. You could do all kinds of stuff to make that dirty and messy and not make it look fake. And it just, some of those things didn't work. Editing. Odin to Darcy smash cut is rough, right? Yeah. It's just a rough choice. Um, so I think the move or these 5 minutes are an exercise in kind of expository drag
Yeah.
from an editing perspective. Like the pacing just doesn't land as a result of this. And we have 4 locations. I think, what did we say last time? We went to 6 different locations. So the movie does slow down in these 5 minutes. And I think practically it slows down. Emotionally, it is a roller coaster.
I was thinking about this before when you're talking about how it just seems like the movie is just reminding us where all these people are. One of the sort of narrative devices that's often used in movies like this is moving the pieces into position, where the idea is that you are setting up for the big set piece, and it might be a set piece battle, or it might be a set piece emotional confrontation, whatever it is, but you have to move all the pieces into the right place so then you can hit play and they can all interact with each other.
Right.
And that can be done poorly, but it also can be done well. But where I think a lot of movies really fall, and it's funny, I think about this because it happens in reality TV all the time, but it also happens in movies like this, is where you're not moving the pieces into place. You're shining a spotlight on each individual piece to remind the audience it's there. And in reality TV, a lot of times when there's like 5 people and one of them's about to be cut, the person will say, and so the loser tonight is, the person voted off tonight is, and then the camera will just take a second and focus on the face of each individual person before finally giving you the reveal. And it's annoying and it's not dramatic and it just feels like a lazy waste of space. And that's what you're doing here. You're just reminding us, here's where Darcy and Eric are, here's where Thor and Loki are, here's where all this is happening. Like, and none of it's needed. It just feels amateurish and cheap and lazy.
You absolutely remind me of the Great British Bake Off, where the trick is right before they're about to say goodbye to a baker, they always close in on the baker they're going to say goodbye to, and then another baker that you thought they were going to say goodbye to, but it was always the first baker for like 13 seasons before they realized, oh, we're kind of telegraphing our shot.
Spoilers.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's really it. And I look at, if we were looking at this and had the opportunity to sort of recut it, right? You could recut it and be more aggressive toward the MCU comedy beats. But what happens if you remove the Earth cutaways completely? Let's just get rid of Darcy. Give her a shining moment later. We've already seen Selvig and the Stonehenge bits. Let's just get rid of that. Then you have a set of minutes, say 4.5 minutes, that are tonally consistently mythic, right?
Yeah.
That, I think, goes a long way toward just making this feel consistent, even if there are beats that I think don't work in Loki's cell. How without dialogue, for example, could we better understand grief and decay and disillusion through performance and set dressing and replace exposition with visual revelation in that final sequence, right? Let's have Thor and Loki say less and communicate more by just their actions. I think these 2 performers are up to it. I think we have, and I'll just say, to boil it down, we have a couple of really good show don't tell moments in these 5 minutes that are absolutely undercut by dialogue after them.
Yeah.
And I think that's the poison pill of these minutes.
Yeah. I think you're right. You could have cut so much of this. You keep that reveal moment and still maybe his brother calling it out, and then just like cut immediately to the warriors getting ready, and then Loki is the last one to step into the shot. And the warriors 3 look at Thor, and maybe one of them says, "Do you trust him?" And he says, "I trust that he's my mother's son." Something like that. That's just like, I trust that he has had the same experience that I do, or I trust that he, that his grief is the same as mine. Something like that.
Nails it. And you know what? I love that you bring the Warriors 3 back in. We totally didn't talk about them, and they have a principal part in these 5 minutes. And between them and Heimdall and Loki and Thor, we have an opportunity for rebuilding through grief and decay and toward action without being so parochial about it from a script perspective.
I mean, I'll admit, I barely remember what they do in these minutes, but I remember what they could have done. Because again, what if the conflict is them with Heimdall? Because Heimdall's loyalty is to Odin.
Yes.
The Warriors 3 loyalty is to Thor. And, they don't really care. They've been happy to disobey Odin in the past because they agree with Thor.
Right.
And so what if that is more of the conflict? Bring that in. And again, you just have to have them giving each other looks. You don't have to have all of this, but I just...
Well, and Loki's loyalty is to his dead mom.
Right.
Right. That is, I think that's the linchpin in the scene.
Right.
That Thor misses his mother, of course, and he's enraged. And Odin misses his wife and is enraged. But Thor's primary motivation and his primary angst is really toward Odin at this point, for letting what happened and for being as recalcitrant to a warmonger as he is.
And again, here, there's such a ball that is dropped because this is all about generations and generational trauma and how do you deal with the issues of the past and how do you carry on or break the cycles of your parents?
Yeah.
Odin is fighting his father's enemy. And there could have been such a line of Thor, Thor, I am fighting my father's enemy. You must show me the loyalty that I showed to my father, Bor, or whatever the hell his dad's name was. And Thor is like, no, but what if you're wrong? What if Grandpa was actually kind of a warmonger? And maybe we could break this cycle.
Yeah, because lest we forget, Loki and I are also fighting our father's enemy.
Yeah.
Right? This is the hand-me-down structure of these kinds of blood vengeances.
And here's kind of the last point that I'll throw out, because to me, it really highlights the failure of the movie as a whole. There's one word that is completely irrelevant to these moments that are the heart and soul of so much of what the movie is building to. And that word is ether. The ether is completely irrelevant to this conversation. You could remove the ether as a plot device and just say Malekith wanted revenge or Malekith wanted to steal the throne or whatever it is. And it plays out exactly the same. And if the ether isn't directly relevant to this, why in the world is it in the movie? Except, again, as we've said, to service the needs of the MCU as a whole instead of this.
Right. Which is fine. The problem is, and I think this boils it down, what you're saying really boils it down, is that these minutes when the movie slows down and asks questions are really problematic. And I can't wait for some bang, bang, smashy, smashy again, because I need a breath of fresh air. Just would somebody please just go be Marvel for a bit. Just give me just a dose of nonsense. I'm ready.
Get Pete Wright some green screen, because that's all he's going to get.
But don't do it in a thoughtful trolley problem moment. That's where I fall apart. So there we are. Action will happen. Things are going to happen. I don't remember if it's in the next 5 minutes, but I feel it coming.
I'm going to say action in the most technical sense. I mean, I was making fun of you with it because I just don't think we ever, were you enraptured by the battle scene in the last 5 minutes? It was awful.
No.
It was green screen nonsense that gave us nothing.
No, you're absolutely right. But at least I can relish in the pixel parade. I can be Popcorn Pete. I'm okay with that part of me. But when they stop and ask me to be thoughtful, I'm gonna be, and that's where the pain happens.
I mean, I get you in terms of sometimes you don't need the fancy and the nuance. If I go to, I love going to very fancy, Michelin-starred restaurants when I can afford them or when someone else is taking me and having that dining experience. But God damn it, I love some pizza rolls. And I really enjoy some pizza rolls. And I get the thought of saying, stop giving me French cuisine, give me pizza rolls. But they burn the pizza rolls. They can't even do the most basic action, the most basic tropes. They get wrong. They screw up. I'm not asking them to give me Shakespeare. I'm not asking for Antigone. I'm asking, can you at least understand? Can you at least give me the Antigone trope? Don't be a great Greek philosopher. Be a 7th grader who's read one piece of Greek literature and can reproduce it. That's all I want.
Well, all of that does make me nervous about the bottom half of this movie because they're going to be doing the bang, bang, smashy, smashy stuff, but they're also going to have to try to make ether relevant because the movie has to end with relevance. And I worry about that.
Yeah, no, understand this. Pete is worried that I might become just overwhelmingly negative about this movie.
No, I know you're overwhelmingly. I'm worried I'm going to be overwhelmingly negative about this. I'm worried you're going to win this battle of wills over whether this movie is ultimately delightful or not.
Here's the thing. If I win, we both lose because I am rock solid dedicated to the idea that there is no such thing as an objective perspective on a movie. I do not believe. I think there is someone out there always who can. I do think for the most part, there are subjective perspectives on media. And the idea of an objective perspective on media feels anathema to everything I hold dear. And yet the idea that someone could like this movie strikes me as deeply troublesome for the human condition. Like, I just don't, it's just so, I want to say it. So here, this is the movie that's going to test me. And I'm going to hold on to the idea that I think it is perfectly possible that my experience of the movie is subjective and that other people have a different subjective experience of it than I do. I don't understand you, and I will jokingly question your sanity, but I will still, it's like Voltaire. I hate what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. That there's any cinematic goodness anywhere in these 2 hours of nearly, but not completely objective, cinematic slop.
Okay. I'm here for it.
There we go.
Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us these fine 5 minutes. We sure appreciate you and you downloading this and your time and your attention. We're coming back for 61 to 65 next week.
Here's what it's good.
Yeah. I think so, too. And your definition of good may vary.
I was being sarcastic.
Oh, I know. So on behalf of the Good Ethical Panda themselves, Matthew Fox, make sure to go over to truestory.fm to see all of the Ethical Panda shows, Superhero Ethics, and the Star Wars Generations podcast. And coming soon,
the once and future parent.
Echo. Very excited about that. And, I'm at truestory.fm too, and it's going to be, there are a lot of shows there that you can find that I'm on as well. So
if you are someone who has dealt with ADHD, if you are someone who has people in your life who dealt with ADHD, and you want to break through all the media bullshit about it, please listen to Pete's podcast about it. It is something that if I heard 20 years ago, my life is a fundamentally different thing. I have forwarded it to my therapist. I've forwarded it to other friends of mine with ADHD. It is so powerful and so good and something that I'm so glad that you're a part of. And this is not just me campaigning to be a guest on it someday, though I am actively campaigning to be a guest on it someday. But it is life-changing. And I think if ADHD has touched your life in any way, even if it's like, if you're someone who doesn't you've got a brother who has a kid with ADHD and you think your brother coddles them too much or you don't really get it, listen to the podcast. I promise you, it is going to either make you feel incredibly affirmed or challenge you if you're not someone who really understands ADHD. And definitely please check that out.
It means the world, Matthew. Thank you.
You're welcome. You want to actually say
very important to me. But
it just comes up. Can you remind me the name of it? I think it's just called the ADHD podcast.
It's Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.
Taking Control.
Yep. That's
there
it.
You go.
All right. And we will be back next week with the next 5 minutes of Thor, The Dark World.
We have spoken.